Hey, and peers. There we go. This is Dr. Jones checking in. Happy to see you all back virtually. Let's dig in. We were on ANP1, lecture test 1. We did video 1, so that makes this video 2, which I need to write down before I forget. Video 2, and we're starting at the top of Noteset page 3. Now, if your formatting comes out differently, I know we're all running 20 different versions of Microsoft Word. This is what mine looks like at the top of page 3. So that's where we're starting. Gross anatomy is macroscopic anatomy. Macro means large. And this is the anatomy visible to the naked eye. So this will include things like organs, organ systems, many of the tissues. Embryology is the study of structural changes in an embryo. Let me get my pen going here. Let's see, red? Yeah, no, I think we have to click pin. It's automatically red. Okay, gross anatomy, check. Embryology is the study of the structural changes in an embryo. An embryo is what you were before you were born. Microscope, there's more to it than that, and we will cover that in great detail at the very end of ANP2, not today. Microscopic anatomy, so macro means large, micro means small, and a scope means to see. So a scope is something you see through. Microscope, telescope, periscope. Yeah, here's the third one. So this is anatomy that you need a microscope to see. So some of the tissues are microscopic, cells are microscopic, and the things inside the cells. Okay, cytology, we'll cover all that in a minute. Cytology is the study of cells. Cyto means cell. Ology is the study of cells. Histo means tissue. So histology is the study of tissues, exactly. Signs. Signs are objective indicators of disease. So these are things you can measure. You can measure temperature, blood pressure, heart rate, blood sugar, enzymes, electrolytes, anything you can measure, respiratory rate, anything you can measure and put a number on is a sign. Symptoms are subjective. Signs are objective, things you can measure. Symptoms are subjective. So these are things you cannot measure. They're also indicators of disease, but these are things that you have to take the patient's word for, that you cannot measure. That includes things like fatigue, which is being tired, pain, mind fog, hunger, malaise, all of these things that your patients will tell you about that you cannot measure. Now, you can have your patient try to put a number on their pain on a scale of 1 to stepped on a Lego, but they're not things you as a practitioner can measure, so that's why they're considered subjective. Nectar of the gods. Okay, and then the scientific method is an organized way of asking questions and looking for answers. And here are the steps of the scientific method. The purpose, this is the question, like, what am I curious about? What am I wanting to learn? The research, that didn't show, is your background research. What is already known about this question I have? And the hypothesis is you predict the answer to the problem. This is your educated guess. Having done some research, you make a guess about what you think will answer the question. And then you experiment. You design a test to confirm or disprove your hypothesis. And then you analyze, then you run the numbers of your experiment. And then you draw a conclusion. Did you get it right? Was your hypothesis correct? Did you disprove a null hypothesis, which is even better? And then you share your conclusions with other people, and they rip them apart because that's what science is. You do your best, and everybody else does their best to try and improve on that. I keep seeing these memes about, I'm recording during COVID times, about how people don't believe the science because the scientists keep changing their minds. So the scientists keep doing experiments and analyzing, concluding, going through the scientific method over and over and over again. And as we get more information, then yes, of course the conclusions change. I mean, if we went with our first best guess and never tested it and never improved on that, that's not science. That's something, but it's not science. Science involves improving our concept of reality, constantly improving our understanding of reality. And how do we do that? We use the scientific method by asking questions and looking for answers, and then having everybody else rip through it and see if they can come up with better answers, and then we argue about it, and then we keep doing experiments until there is a preponderance of evidence. Okay. Science. It's true whether you believe in it or not. Okay, so a note on clinical notes from the note set. While we won't normally cover clinical notes in lecture, you are expected to read and know all the clinical notes in each of the chapters covered on the tests. Expect to see a few clinically related questions on every test, and especially on the final. In the newest version of the book, quite a bit of the information from the clinical notes has been moved into the text. So do be extra careful to make sure that you are learning and reviewing the clinically related information. The majority of the people taking this class want to be clinicians, either nurses, excuse me, OTAs, PTAs, sonographers, and of course kinesiologists and firefighters. So definitely most of us are here because we intend to be working with patients, or for the medical billers and coders, definitely working with the clinical side of anatomy. We're not taking anatomy here to get a PhD in anatomy. We're taking anatomy to be working with the healthcare field. So definitely keep track of the clinical information as we go through the course. All right, so now we're on to levels of organization. Now this material, this next few pages of material, are both lecture and lab material. I do want to say that chapter 1 in your book, there is no part of chapter 1 in your book that you are not responsible for the test. Chapter 2 in the book, we're only doing the parts that are in the note set and in the lectures. And chapter 3, we're learning most of it, but not all of it. So again, refer to your note set. Definitely read the books, but use the note set as a guide for what's the most important thing in the book for you to read. This whole book, in 2 semesters, we cover maybe a third of it. So we're not just memorizing all of these chapters. We're learning out of the note set. And the note sets I have, as you can see, kind of fill in the blank. I meant for these to be like workbooks to go along with your lecture book. Your lecture book is not easy to read. This is an early sophomore college level class, but the reading level in this book is closer to a senior college reading level. And so I don't expect you all to be able to just sit and read the book and be like, oh, okay. I admit there are sections of the book, especially in the 2402 part, where I read the page and I'm like, wait, what? And then you do like Veronica Mars, you just keep reading it until it makes sense. But I have designed this hopefully to be a workbook for you to have kind of a treasure hunt. This is the information I need. Where in this monstrosity can I find it? And I usually have page numbers on there for you. I've updated the page numbers in the first 4 note sets, not the 5th or 6th yet. It might be updated by the time you get to it. If not, I apologize. The material's the same, even if the page numbers are off. Okay. And the tests are largely out of the note sets. So I'd say probably 90% from the note sets, plus another, a little bit from the book sections that I asked you to read, things that we didn't have time to go over, like maybe the clinical notes type of thing. Also, there will be things that I have written on here that I say every time I give this lecture, that you are responsible for. And also there are things that I have typed into these PowerPoints that aren't in the note set that you are responsible for on the test. So I'd say 90% the note set, and then another 10% from the book, the PowerPoints, and my lectures that weren't in the note set by itself. So definitely, if you're short on time, just do the note set. The note set's the primary bit. That's the key. Okay. All right, so the levels of organization. The first level is the chemical/molecular level. And these three are different chemicals and molecules that you can see. The atoms combine to make the proteins work together. And that's the first level of organization. The chemical/molecular level works together to make the cellular level. And these are your cells. This is a cardiocyte, C-Y-T-E, means cell. And cardio means heart, like when you do cardiac exercises, cardio. And then the cells work together to make tissues, the tissue level of organization. Here's your cardiac muscle tissue. Tissue is a bunch of cells and cell products working together. And then the tissue works together to make organs. This is the organ level of organization. The organs are things you're familiar with. These are macroscopic, meaning you can see them without a microscope. You can see them with the naked eye. Heart, liver, lungs, kidneys, brain, these kinds of things. Your skin is considered an organ. It's actually the largest organ, which I'm sure you've heard. And the organs work together to make the organ systems. So this is the cardiovascular system. You've got the urinary system, the respiratory system, digestive system, the integumentary system, which is the skin, hair, and nails, glands, nothing. And then, I'm in the way again. Okay. And then the organ systems work together to make an organism. And this is human anatomy and physiology, so the organism that we are studying is the human being. I've been watching Community, and so now every time I say human being, I think of their mascot, which is the human being. That show cracks me up. Although it's kind of hard to watch now because the forced hilarity during COVID times is jarring, but it's still funny. Okay. Let's see. So, give an example of a human being, of an organism. You've got human being. What is another organism other than a human being? And usually I first get a list of mammals, cat, dog, horse. But what about non-mammals? What about other vertebrates? What about sharks and fish and lizards and snakes, reptiles? What about birds? I actually have in the backyard chicken and quail. So we have kind of a tiny bird farm. And okay, what about things that aren't animals? What about plants? Plants are organism. Each tree is an organism, although in some cases the whole grove of trees acts together as one organism. A flower, even things like a bacterium or invertebrates like ants. Actually, mushrooms aren't animals or plants, but they're closer to animals than they are plants. Weird, right? Mushrooms are great. Viruses are not organisms. They're not considered alive because they need a host cell to replicate. To be considered alive, you have to be able to replicate your species on your own. And viruses can't, so they are not considered life. Bacteria can, so they are considered alive. So an antibiotic, bio means life. Antibiotics work against bacteria. They do not work against viruses, which we will talk about later in great detail. Okay, some detail. Yeah, we'll talk about that. What is the smallest stable unit of matter? That is an atom. Do I have a picture of an atom on the next page? I do not. An atom. And the smallest living unit in the body is a cell. Okay, and then I have, I believe, on your canvas a separate sheet with the levels of organization. So I'm going to talk you through these. Normally, we don't have time to do these in class. I ask you to do these on your own, but we will flip through these somewhat quickly and I will read you the highlights. You can pause these and fill that paper out on your own in great detail. These are all things that you need to know. So the integumentary system is, as I mentioned, skin, hair, glands, and nails. And the skin is the largest organ in the body, protects against environmental hazards, regulates body temperature, and of course, sensation. Next, we have and we will be learning the organ systems. Actually, we're learning the we're doing chemistry, chapter 2 for this test, and we're doing cells, chapter 3 for this test, test 1. And then test 4, we're doing the tissue level, and then we will be doing the organ systems. So we're going through not regions, but organ systems. So test 4 will include tissues and the integumentary system. No, test 2. Test 2. Chapter 4. Test 2. There we go. And then the skeletal system will be test 3, and this includes the bones and the cartilage that connects the bones in between the bones. It doesn't quite connect. And some of them it can. Okay, we will get there. We will get there when you need to know. The ligaments and the bone marrow, which is where your red blood cells are made, but we'll talk about that more in 2402. And provides support and protection for other tissues, stores calcium and other minerals, and makes blood cells. The muscular system, that's test 4, and we're doing all of these in lab in the same order. And it's the muscles and the tendons that connect them too. And it moves you, protects and supports, and generates body heat. The nervous system, we're doing this in test 5 and test 6 and coming back for 2402 test 1. So we've got 3 tests over the nervous system. This one will be special senses. And this includes the brain, the spinal cord, all of the nerves, and all of the sense organs. And it directs your immediate response to stimulus, coordinates everything else, and sensory information is interpreted. Okay, and then endocrine system is 2402, test 2, and I'm sure you've heard about this one. And that includes all of the endocrine glands. We've got the pituitary gland, the pancreas, the gonads, endocrine, stop. Okay, it's been 20 minutes. The thyroid gland, the adrenal glands, and here's, is that maybe the only picture of the thymus in your entire book? And the nervous system does short-term changes. The endocrine system does long-term changes. It adjusts metabolic activity and energy use. We'll talk about that next semester. And structural and functional changes during development, the endocrine system that makes you grow up, physically speaking. Cardiovascular is test 3, 2402, and that includes the heart. The blood is considered an organ, and the blood vessels are considered an organ, and it distributes the blood cells, the nutrients and waste, oxygen, carbon dioxide, yada yada. And it distributes the heat, specifically the heat made by the muscles, but also just generally heat. We'll talk about that briefly next semester too. The lymphatic system we are largely skipping, but I do require that you know where the spleen is. That is the spleen. Okay, and we've got the thymus. Lymph vessels are always green in the pictures, and lymph nodes are the green lumps. Tonsils are in the back of the throat, and they filter the fluids in the body to defend against infection and disease, and then they return those fluids right here and right here back into the venous circulation, back into the veins, so that it goes back throughout the cardiovascular system. And then the respiratory was also test, what did I say, three? Cardiovascular and respiratory together, I think. Nasal cavities, sinuses, larynx, trachea, bronchi, the lungs, alveoli. These terms that you don't know, we will learn all of them next semester. And the function here is to get air to the exchange surfaces, which are the little alveoli inside the lungs. And that gets oxygen into the bloodstream, removes carbon dioxide from the bloodstream, and also produces sound for communication. So that's an important function. And then digestive, I think that's test 4. We'll do digestive next. And that includes the digestive tract, which is a tube that goes from mouth to anus. So the oral cavity, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine through to the anus, and also the accessory organs like the teeth, the salivary glands, the liver, the pancreas, the gallbladder, and we will cover all of that next semester. And the digestive system, of course, digests your foods. Food reabsorbs water and absorbs nutrients and actually stores energy reserves, and we'll talk about that some next semester. Urinary system, kidneys. The ureters are these tubes, the urinary bladder, and the urethra, not aretha, urethra. Have a little respect. And that is another filter of the blood. The liver filters the blood, the spleen filters the blood, the kidneys filter the blood. It's all about filtering the blood. And that excretes the waste products from the blood, and it regulates the water, how much water gets urinated out and how much gets reabsorbed into the bloodstream. It stores the urine, which is handy, otherwise we'd be like peeing while we walk. And it regulates blood ion concentrations and pH next semester. The male reproductive includes the testes, the epididymis, the ductus deferens, seminal vesicles, prostate gland, penis, and scrotum. And the functions are to produce the male sex cells, which are sperm, and the fluids and hormones that go with them. And of course, sexual intercourse is a function, as it is with the female reproductive tract. Here we have ovaries, the uterine tubes, the uterus, vagina, the labia, clitoris, mammary glands, which are used to feed babies, and it produces the female sex cells, which are oocytes, and the hormones, and it supports the developing embryo from conception to delivery, makes milk, and sexual intercourse is a function. All right, well, our timer went off, so that was page 3. Yeah, that was page 3. And, and that other page with your organ systems and organs. And you need to know the organs and their location, and you need to know what they look like for the lab test 1. And you need to know what all the organ systems are for lecture test 1. So all of that is need to know for lecture and lab. So this has been Dr. Jones with lecture test MP1, lecture test 1, video 2. And thank you for tuning in. The education must go on. Dr. J out.